sermon is going to be titled, Relying on the Power of God. Relying on the Power of God. And this came to me for all the situations that we're going through, with everything that's happening around us, these times in this life, the financial crisis, these catastrophes, all this stuff, and we need to know, where to turn. We need to see, how to rely on the power of God, why to rely on the power of God and when, these things we need to just understand. And first off is, how do we rely on the power of God? A lot of us don't know. How do we rely on the power of God? And a lot of times, forefront has to be with faith. We have to be faithful. Faithful in relying on God. And then, we have to, that faith, builds on trust. So we have to, trust in God, that He will, do these things. And then also, another one is prayer. We have to constantly pray, like Ali was saying this morning, that is, something that we have that a lot of us don't use. The enemy wants to hold that, keep us away from that, but that's one connection that we have with God. As I've noticed, as I've pointed out in another sermon, that, prayer is a big connection with God that we must have. And then also is patience. We must have patience when we rely on God, because we as humans expect things like that. We expect things instantly, right now. And that's not had God's time. It may be, but for us it should be, but it's not all the time. For us it can be. We have to have patience. Another one would have to be perseverance. We have to be perseverant when we ask for, things from God, or when we rely on the power of God. We have to be perseverant in that. We can't let things, keep us away from that, relying ability towards God. These are things that how we rely on God. And now, when do we rely on God? There's sometimes that, you don't even know. But these are some times that I've pointed out, that I've seen is when we are in stress. We come across a lot of stress in our life. Whether it be financial, or medical, or any kind of stress that puts you under, these are the times we need to rely upon God, on the power of God. And then, sometimes we have problems. We have problems in our life, and just simple problems, little things that, maybe, you might think too small for God to understand. Like Hallie was saying this morning too, about, how David had the snoring problem. Something like that, anybody else would be too small. But for Brother Ali, what kind of faith he has, he said, I'm going to give it to God. Small things like that, we just need to, have the power of God, relying on that. And then when we are confronted sometimes, we may be even confronted with certain things in this life, whether it be people, or any kind of other confrontation, that comes upon us, we must rely on the power of God in these times. And then, sometimes we even lack faith sometimes. And that's, another key point in time that we need to rely on God. Because when we lack our faith, we know that God is sound in everything. We have to have that kind of, reliance upon God, that He is the sound faith that we need to build on. The rock of Christ, He says. That's the foundation that we need to have our faith on. And then also, sometimes we need to break addictions or bad habits. This is when we need to rely on the power of God. I was talking to my wife, we were, having a walk, and I, just brought up this point about, how we as humans sometimes with addictions, it's like we're childish, we're kids. We're kind of scared to give up on things with addictions. It's kind of like it's got a grasp on us. It makes us feel like we're in that childhood state again. Maybe that's why, it's so hard to give it up, because, we like it so much, that child thing. And I was going to go with a sermon on that, maybe in the future. But these are times, when we need to rely on the power of God. And then, but the key question is, why? Why do we rely on the power of God? Why is that? Why do we rely on the power of God? I see it as we need security in these times, and these hard struggles, we're going through. We need security, something to grasp onto, some kind of security to fall back on. And then there's hope. We must find hope in these times. This is why we rely on the power of God, to find hope in all this, strife and whatnot. We must see through, the problems. Like it says, there's a silver lining on every, cloud. So we have to look for that silver lining, whatever it is. You know, and then there's confidence. You know, why do we rely on the power of God? Because, you know, we have to be confident in that. You know, that God is going to do these things with His power when He does these. And then also, you know, there's forgiveness. You know, when we ask, you know, we know we're in fault. We're always in fault. You know, we have to come before God and ask for His forgiveness. And in this time, you know, this is why we have, you know, to rely on the power of God, because of the forgiveness that He offers for us through His Son, Jesus Christ. You know, and then mercy. You know, mercy is another big thing, you know, because He showed His mercy so much upon us. You know, this is why we have to rely upon Him, you know, so much, because of the mercy that He's given us already. But the main key, I think, of all this is salvation. You know, it's for us to be able to be saved through all those things that are happening, through all of what is past, what's, you know, present and future. You know, we are saved as Christians, you know, through the blood of Christ. You know, salvation is why we must rely on the power of God. And we're also going to look at an example from the Bible. And it's going to be in the Old Testament. We're going to look at an Old Testament example right now. And this is going to be in when King Asa is confronted about a situation. And we'll see how he handles it. And we're going to find it in 2 Chronicles in chapter 16. And we're going to start in verse 1. The book of Chronicles, the second book of Chronicles, in chapter 16 and verse 1. And I'll read it from here. It says, "In the 36th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, came up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might let none go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah." You know, this is the 36th year. I've seen it just in the first line that we, you know, in this chapter. It says in the 36th year of reign of Asa. That means, you know, that he's already been reigning there 36 years already. This is, you know, he's experienced as a king. He already knows he's you know, he was and should be a man of God in this time too, because he's experienced in that also from the, you know, previous chapters we see. And then also, you know, that comes up, the Baasha, king of Israel, came up against him. We see, you know, what he's confronted now. You know, the king of Israel, the sister nation, you know, Judah and Israel, you know, he came up and he built this Ramah, which is it's a city that, you know, that kept people from coming into the main entrance of Israel. So it kept them from coming into Judah. So he built that up as a blockade, pretty much. So we see this Baasha confronts Asa, you know, and who is the great-grandson. If, you know, you do the genealogy, he's the great-grandson of Solomon. You know, who was one of the, you know, greatest kings that, you know, that Judah or Israel, you know, has ever seen at this time. You know, so he's the great-grandson. So that shows you lineage in that. You know, and he won't let the people come in or go out of Judah. You know, he's trying to build up this Ramah, he says.